Video, the streets of Chicago over the weekend show some alarming happenings with a bunch of youth roaming the streets in downtown Chicago, blocking traffic, even jumping on cars. Several shootings reported, and just what looks like absolute chaos. We're looking at one video posted to Twitter. People fleeing after what appears to be some shots that were fired somewhere, and police running after various suspects. But also other video in broad daylight shows some bad actions with a whole host, dozens and dozens of young people jumping on cars, blocking traffic, again in downtown Chicago. Even mainstream news sharing some of this in the Twitter space. Also, you've got some up-close video of what looks like a bunch of teenagers beating the snot out of a Tesla and smashing the windshield, jumping up on the car, smashing the roof of the car, even at one point lighting this vehicle on fire and seeing some flames come out of it, which was pretty alarming, especially when you talk about a Tesla being on fire. So obviously there's a lot of troubling activity happening in Chicago. How did the Chicago media report on that? So let's take a look at some of the latest news from the Chicago Sun-Times. Looking around and, don't really see too much. Boy 17 shot to death in New City. 2 dead in domestic attack in Chicago. Stolen car crashes into pickup truck. Seems to be individual crimes here. 2 teens shot and wounded, 15 arrested in loop melee. Let's take a look at that to get some more detail here. Again, from the Chicago Sun-Times saying the teens were in a large, unruly crowd Friday and dancing on cars when shots were fired around 9 p.m. Saturday. So you, of course, have this ongoing problem of teens in the middle of roads causing some issues. Chicago Sun Tribune also reporting on this, talking about unruly teens as summer approaches, and a statement from Mayor Lori Lightfoot. She says that twice in the last few days, this is over the weekend, several large groups of young people have gathered across the city. Many of them were there to have a good time and enjoy the unseasonably warm weather. However, some of those young people were involved in reckless, disrespectful, and unlawful behavior, she said. As I have said before, we as a city cannot and will not allow any of our public spaces to become a platform for criminal conduct. Most importantly, parents and guardians must know where their children are and be responsible for their actions. Instilling the important values of respect for people and property must begin at home. Now, incoming Mayor Brandon Johnson issued a statement Sunday. Tribune reporting, it's unacceptable and has no place in our city. However, it is not constructive to demonize youth who have otherwise been starved of opportunities in their own communities. I would love to hear your thoughts on this at 217-629-7970. That's the phone number where you can chime in live and local. How do you get control of this? And what do you think of Brandon Johnson's statement there, saying that we can't demonize these young people because of the lack of opportunity they have in their communities? Good morning. You're on WMAY.
You're going to save yourself a lot of trouble. Why don't you just say it's just a normal day, just like every day in Chicago when it comes to all this nonsense? Those nuts up there are full of.
Well, and listen, I mean, there's always a concern when weather gets warm, and it was absolutely gorgeous Friday and Saturday. Even up in Chicago, sunny skies, the mild temperatures. There's always a concern that you're going to have rambunctious crowds who take advantage of the warm weather.
That's normal with people that are devolving. I mean, haven't they got better things to do, like get a job?
Well, I think goes to what Brandon Johnson had to say. He said that you can't demonize these kids, essentially, because of the lack of opportunity they have in their communities. I mean, you just had a Walmart close in a part of Chicago, and there's a lot of people upset by that. So,
that's because they robbed it out of business. I mean, they go into these neighborhoods and they run the businesses out because they robbed them, and they all act all upset because it's gone. What's the matter with these people? I mean,
Well, I appreciate the call, 217-629-7970. That's the phone number you can call in and chime in on what we're seeing out of Chicago. And Zero Hedge, they reported on this, essentially saying that all hell breaks loose in Chicago as hundreds of teenagers wreak havoc. And they share all the videos that have circulated of just the melees and even stuff happening in the broad daylight, it seems. So let's hear from you at 217-629-7970. Good morning. You're on WMAY.
Well, good morning, Greg. You know, it's not unusual. I had a buddy who lives up there in Chicago, and his reaction to the new mayor was, Chicago, rest in peace. And I was thinking, well, that's kind of critical. And now it's he lives up there. It's basically it's just kids from the private school. They're out for spring break, and they're letting off a little steam, because they've been studying all year. You got to. It's like winning a football game. They got a new mayor. They're just celebrating.
Well, you do see when a college team wins, the fans of that college team sometimes go into the streets and they overturn cars and they riot. So yeah, I mean, you get kind of a similar type of thing going on.
The criminals up there got a new hero. Their team won, and they're celebrating. That's how it works in the United States.
Well, that's, I guess, one way to see it. Appreciate the call, and we'll take more of them as they come in at 217-629-7970. That's the phone number. But again, Brandon Johnson, I want to read his statement again, as reported by the Tribune, saying that it's unacceptable and has no place in our city. However, it's not constructive to demonize those who have otherwise been starved of opportunities in their own community. Goes on to say, our city must work together to create spaces for youth to gather safely and responsibly under adult guidance and supervision to ensure that every part of our city remains welcome for both residents and visitors. So how do you do that? And what is it? You have nightclubs that are guarded by police, and isn't just being in public with police there enough to have that supervision? Or is it a matter of a lack of respect? Or you have a few bad actors in a crowd of hundreds that then sparks this type of activity and this type of behavior. These obviously are not things you want to see in Chicago. It's not images you want to see anywhere. We've even had in the past problems in Springfield with pop-up block parties where young people from all over the region, not just in Springfield, you got people coming over from Decatur and so on, that will come to Springfield, find a block, and essentially take it over. Be it a park with a lot of neighbors around, there's loud music. Then there's the concern that you could see violence erupt as tensions might rise with various factions going against each other, and then the possibility that gunfire might ring out. And that's something that happened in Chicago over the weekend, as you've got those reports, again, 2 teams shot, 15 arrested in a loop melee. You got a stolen car. You got 2 dead in a domestic attack. 17-year-old shot to death in Due City. I mean, those are just some of the headlines from the Chicago Sun-Times. So is it imperative on the city to have more enforcement of large crowds? Or how do you go about controlling this? And should the governor get Illinois State Police more involved, and especially some of these more trafficked areas where you've got a lot of tourists that want to go and enjoy the day, but then they might see dozens and dozens of young people smashing windows and jumping on cars and blocking traffic. So should the governor get state police involved? You've had others encourage the governor to try to get the National Guard involved. Who knows if that's going to happen? Good morning. You're on WMAY.
Hello, Greg. This is Courtney. How you doing?
Good. Yourself?
I'm all right. I'm up here. In Chicago, and I didn't see firsthand what happened. I just heard about it. And a lot of people talking about it on Facebook. One thing is there's no actual punishment for being unruly. They can do what they want to do and have these mob actions or come into a store, take what they want, or they can actually cause havoc that they already caused. There's no real repercussion that comes behind it. And we can thank Kim Fox for that. We can thank a lot of Chicago politicians, Cook County politicians, and this is what we're stuck with. This is why it's unruly up here.
So what is it going to take then for Kim Foxx, for instance, to actually prosecute? So what's it going to take for various actions to hold people accountable for this just absolutely horrible behavior?
Well, how are you going to lock them up, or are you going to let the parents deal with it? If the parents were to deal with it, then guess what? They should have dealt with it beforehand. So now you get the law. Now you get the law involved. All right. So now, what is it? Is it mob action or is it lawyer? Well, why don't we stick those penalties when we have mob action? Right? If it's mob action, you're actually stopping and impeding traffic, and now you have damage to a car, and a car was set on fire, and 2 teams were shot. That is a riot.
Yeah.
That's a riot. So now we need to look into what laws can we strengthen and say, hey, if you commit this type of atrocity, you're going to be locked up for it. You have to have some type of accountability for it.
Well, and I would imagine, too, it probably requires having police ready with riot gear to respond to these types of instances. Courtney, I appreciate the call. We'll definitely connect soon, all right?
Yep.
I got to get you back on for a longer segment. Let's take another call. Good morning. You're on WMAY. Good morning.
Yeah. Isn't it funny, too, that when all this stuff is happening and the crime is getting so much worse, the governor says nothing. Nothing comes from out of his office at all. Doesn't care about it.
Well, last week, the governor was celebrating having the Democratic National Committee's convention in Chicago for 2024.
Oh, yeah. Let him crash that with one of their riots or their protests, but they won't. But he doesn't care about anybody. People ought to wake up about this, Greg. It is really scary what's going on. I just don't get it at all.
Well, we'll definitely be tapping in to get everybody's thoughts about this where we can. Good morning. You're on WMAY.
I think it's because Taylor Swift canceled a concert in Chicago.
I don't know about that, but all right. I don't know if you've got a bunch of Taylor Swift fans up there taking to the streets if she cancels a concert. I don't even think that's true. All right, don't put any misinformation out there. I appreciate the calls. Obviously, something that we'll have to keep a closer eye on and see what happens when we get even more warm weather in the foreseeable